90.3 FM. And it's Wednesday, Joe Steckler Day, helping seniors of Brevard. Joe is off today, but filling in for Joe, here's Kerry Fink. Hi, Kerry.
Hey, John Harper. How are you doing today?
Just wonderful.
Well, we have just a great show lined up for today. You know, it's been an amazing week already. I want to reintroduce listeners to Rick Broderick, who is our executive director now. And he's running the place and helping really take us to the next level. So it's so exciting and really looking forward to things. And Rick, it's already been a busy week. We were out at the groundbreaking yesterday, helping a sister charity called St. Stephen's Way get all that. Dennis Mannion, who's one of our board members, he was out there actually working on the cooking. We were all out there, and it was just a beautiful thing to see all this happening. And one of the things somebody would say, well, why are people from a senior organization involved in something that's really dedicated to helping families with homeless kids or homeless families with kids? And yet, so often we read, Rick, that grandparents are having to raise kids these days. And so that puts it squarely in the seniors world, too.
No, thank you, Kerry, and you're absolutely right. And not only is it just because of things like that, but when you think of the people that are actually volunteering and you look at the volunteers and the entire crowd that was there yesterday, 90% of it were seniors. So seniors are, I think, as we age, and I'm in that group now, so as we age, we know we need to give back. And part of that is finding a need to fill. And what I would like to see helping seniors further become is how do we help seniors fill that need? Because we're even our namesake, Helping Seniors of Brevard. So helping seniors is to find a niche that they want filled and helping seniors to fill that niche. And it can be twofold. One, that we are the volunteers helping, and two, that the organization that's being helped is also seniors needing help. So what a great thing to have a two-edged sword, so to speak, where we're helping on both sides.
No, and it's so important. As Joe Steckler, our president and founder, has often talked about, helping seniors exists to complete the senior equation, not compete with any of the other organizations. We are all in this thing together to make a better life for folks in Brevard County. And one of the things, just in speaking of that, we've been all over the map. Kim Bernard, our education specialist, has been up in Merritt Island this morning because, with COVID and all, people can't get out the way they have been normally able to. And I already saw some photos of it, which we'll get up on Facebook later, but it looks like they had a great turnout up there. It's a senior drive-through expo that they had, so people can still get in touch with the information we pass out, as you know, the Senior Scene magazine, where you can find our Helping Seniors newsletter in the center of that. And also, of course, we gotta pitch it. It's how we stay alive. The Helping Seniors car raffle. We've got inserts going out about the tickets and all that. But on today's show, always a pleasure to have such a longtime friend of the Helping Seniors organization. He goes so far back with Joe. He goes back before there was a Helping Seniors. And his name is Bill Johnson. He is a board-certified elder law attorney. And Bill, you've just been a great friend to Helping Seniors really since the get-go. And I was excited. I said, Bill, what do we want to cover today? He said, well, legislative session is going on right now, and let's talk about some of the bills and things that are going on for seniors. So you're the man.
Okay. I'll take that lead in. I should hire you to come introduce me everywhere.
Sure.
The legislative session is in full swing, and there's been a variety of bills. And really, the big one just got introduced. I call it the big one, but that was introduced by Senator Burgess and Representative Burton in conjunction with the Attorney General Ashley Moody. And they introduced a bill to help curb elder exploitation. And the bill is, for those of you who follow these things, House Bill 1041, Senate Bill 1344, and it, in the House at least, is called the Protection of Elderly Persons and Disabled Adults. And there are several new things that this bill proposes to do, and just in a general way, they are going to create some new crimes.
Oh,
okay.
wow.
So, and one of these is interesting, that you can actually be criminally prosecuted if you isolate a senior.
Oh, wow.
So if you have mom living with you, but you and your brother don't get along, and you do not let your brother come visit your mother, you can actually get prosecuted for that. And of course, exploitation, one of the hallmarks of exploitation is to isolate somebody and, get them to give you a power of attorney and go change all their accounts and things like that. So there is an exception, that's if you have good cause to do that. If your brother is the one who's been stealing mom's money, and obviously you don't want to let him anywhere near mom because he's going to drag her down to the bank and change all the accounts, that there is an exception for that. But basically just to isolate a senior because you don't care about or like the other family members is going to actually be a crime. So, and again, like I said, the theory behind that is that's usually where the exploitation occurs.
Right.
Somebody gets mom in their house and doesn't let anybody visit, and next thing you know, all the accounts are changed and things like that. Which brings up point number 2. Point number 2 is if you go around changing accounts and contravening what someone's stated estate plan is, you can be prosecuted for that now.
Wow.
So if mom has all her accounts set up with, she set it up with her 2 kids as beneficiaries on all the accounts, and then you go to the bank and withdraw the money and put it in another account, you and mom jointly, so that if mom passes, you inherit all that account, you can be convicted of a crime now for doing that. Wow. Of course, that doesn't prevent mom from doing it. You're free to change your estate plan anytime you want and your accounts anytime you want. It's really when we get into the vulnerable adult kind of thing where the person is incapable of doing it themselves and somebody goes and does it for them, which changes the way their assets go. And that's a common tactic of exploiters is, they don't think so-and-so should get any money, so they take mom down to the bank, or they go to the bank with the power of attorney, rearrange all the accounts, and subsequently disinherit one of the other family members.
Right.
And that would be a crime now, too. And then lastly is something that the elder law section was trying to get in here, and it is for lack of a better word, a disinheritance kind of statute, in that if you are convicted of exploiting someone, then you cannot take under their will or trust or any other bequest up to the amount you have exploited.
Wow. Okay.
So if you were found guilty of exploiting your mother and you were convicted of, let's say, $100,000, and mom dies and she's got $1 million and her will says she leaves $500 to you and $500 to your sister, well, $100,000 of that now is going to go to your sister, right, to make up for the money that you took earlier. So there is a disincentive for people to do that because they can later be excluded from taking by virtue of the death of the person.
Wow.
So that's a big one. That probably is going to, have a lot of. There's some other facets to it, but those are some of the major aspects of at least that bill.
I was thinking as you were talking about this, everybody probably may recognize the name Laura Moody.
Ashley Moody.
Sorry, Ashley Moody. She's been involved in fighting senior fraud and senior scams and things like that for many years. And I was thinking when you were talking about that, over the years, Bill, we've done I think Joe did a TV show with Ashley Moody where they were talking about some of these scams. And I remember thinking when I was seeing the show that we always have this impression, because we hear about like telephone scams and things like that, that we're always hearing about seniors being vulnerable for that. But yet what she pointed out was that more often than not, it's someone inside the family.
Correct. And I think you're getting the names confused. Laura Moody was a local state attorney.
Okay.
And then Ashley Moody is the attorney general.
Okay.
It's easy to get that. I get that confused. Okay. And I believe Laura Moody has moved to some other role with the sheriff's department.
Okay.
But, yeah. And also, I would point out Representative Burton's been very active in this area, too, as well as Senator Pasadomo, in protecting seniors.
But still, the fact remains, right? Because you must see this all the time in the legal practice and that side of it. And I've certainly heard of it when we talk from the guardian's perspective about how complicated this is, because a lot of times seniors are getting exploited by family members as often, or maybe more often, than happens from outside sources.
The number one exploiter of seniors is family.
Wow.
Yep, number one on the list.
Wow.
Yeah.
And Bill, from my perspective, I guess what seems to make this really hard is it's all too often it's probably a he said, she said, and who within the family, is the good family member, and probably half the times they're both a little sketchy or whatever. Anyway,
you're right on point, because you're like all of a sudden, mom comes to live with daughter. Next thing, mom pays off granddaughter's car, and then the son is pointing the finger at the daughter, saying, you stole that $10,000 to pay off your daughter's car from mom.
Wow.
And you're. And sometimes it's just son looking for his.
Yeah.
And then daughter's going to say, well, mom wanted to do that, of course. And that's where that, confidential relationship and isolation, mom's living with daughter, mom's not telling son that she's going to pay off the granddaughter's car. And sometimes all that happens because they don't want to cause family friction. Sometimes it's all true.
Right.
That mom really did want to pay off the granddaughter's car. Other times, it's people doing arm twisting.
Right.
To the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes.
How many times have I heard you and Joe talk about the wisdom of getting ahead of the curve, and that's all the reason in the world for getting your paperwork put together in front so that your wishes are clear as the senior, how you want all this to work. And yet so often it doesn't happen that way, and then you find yourself on the back end trying to help a family sort it out.
Well, the thing is to do this when you're when you're competent, and then the people you put in these positions have to be trustworthy people. And we all know that money corrupts, and access to money does too. And subsequently, even though you may have thought these people would be the ones to carry out your wishes, a lot of times they don't.
Wow.
Yep.
And this is a big problem in Florida because we're still trying to put our fingers on the best. I guess we're looking for the census to come out and give us the factoids so we can quote it with 100% accuracy. But we all know we live in a county that, at least from the last census, 1 out of 4 of us is over 65. So there is a real big challenge with all of this in our county.
And that's why our exploitation statute is written the way it is, because, as you both pointed out, usually there's no witnesses to this.
Wow.
This didn't happen in front of somebody else. And then you got mom saying, mom's got dementia, and daughter saying mom wanted to do this.
Wow.
And usually there's nobody else who's a witness to the conversation that occurred, whether it be why mom had dementia or prior to even having dementia. So our exploitation statute, you don't have to prove that kind of thing. You just have to prove there was a secret and confidential relationship. Okay? Because it is a totally, at least in our court system, it is a circumstantial case. That's the
Okay.
word I'm looking for. Because there is usually no direct evidence of the exploitation other than the money moving. But like you said, it's either a he said, she said thing.
Right.
And we don't have to prove that. We just have to prove that there was a secret confidential relationship and the money was transferred.
Wow.
So, yeah, it is largely at least a circumstantial crime that you have to prove.
Well, and don't these things often end up being what I call, there's a term called creeping problem. It's, something starts one way, but it winds up another as time goes on. I guess you probably see a lot of that as well,
We see a lot of that, where initially it's, can I borrow $1,000 to make my car payment? And then the next thing, we're moving hundreds of thousands of dollars and things like that.
How do you, as a elder law attorney, when you sit down and you're trying to chart the right course in somebody's situation, the family comes in and obviously everybody's nice, polite, dressed up. They come to the office, but I imagine you have seen so much along the way.
Well, the first thing is you kick everybody else out of the room.
Uh-huh.
So you're talking, if you're doing the documents for mom, everybody else has to go.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make sure that there's no coercion or duress or any of that going on.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some case law on what is considered undue influence.
Right.
And it could be just simply bringing mom to the attorney's office.
Wow.
So which is difficult because, as you know, a lot of times these seniors don't drive.
Yeah.
So somebody's got to bring them, and usually it's going to be one of their kids. But that just creates a presumption of undue influence.
Mm-hmm.
And you can overcome that presumption by taking action. So I had a case where, the lady said she wanted to leave the house to her daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the attorney on the first go-round would not do that. Said, I want you to go home, think about it, and then come back, and then we'll take another look at that. That's one thing you kind of slow things down,
Mm-hmm.
make sure this is really what she wants to do, that kind of thing. And, and met with her by herself and took the safeguards to make sure this lady was not being, having her arm twisted to do this.
Right. Well, and I guess as that goes along, that's one of the reasons why getting in touch with your office is such an important idea, because it really, at the start of it, getting all these things done right. I remember we were talking in the thick of COVID, you were talking about some legislation that otherwise would allow people to do some digital signing of documents and things like that. But then you were pointing out this whole issue of undue influence, because you need to understand who is in the room. And I remember at the time we talked, it wasn't even really a solution for seniors who were stuck behind the walls of an assisted living without having, because technically that prohibits that just for that very reason, right?
Yeah, because they're already vulnerable adults. I mean, if you're in a nursing home or assisted living, you technically already satisfy the definition of a vulnerable adult. So, but I'm glad you brought up COVID, Kerry, because there are some COVID bills out there.
Oh, okay.
One of them is interesting is, the state is bouncing around ideas about limiting liability for COVID at, facilities.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, I mean nursing homes, assisted living facilities. And, some of the legislation is pretty overbroad.
Mm-hmm.
It would cover basically anything that happened, whether related to COVID or not. And
Wow.
I guess the industry argument on that is we had to take all our resources from caring for people and all of a sudden deal with all the COVID stuff.
Sure.
But then again, I know of cases where I've had clients, and just because nobody was allowed to visit, they sat there and got humongous bed sores.
Oh, dear Lord.
And the one person, pre-COVID, was fine, ended up with bed sores, ended up getting admitted, and ended up dying at the hospital.
Oh, dear Lord.
So, this kind of overbroad legislation would absolve the hospital of any sort of negligence.
Right.
Not the hospital, I meant the nursing home.
Yeah.
Of any sort of negligence. So, we're kind of opposed to that broad brush approach, and, nursing homes and assisted livings were also supposed to have infection controls in place, just because of these sorts of things. So that's going to be an interesting argument. And of course, the big money's coming out for the giving them the broad brush of immunity.
Well, isn't that, and that's really kind of been in, you understand this better than I do, but that's also kind of been in the spotlight when we hear all the New York stories too, right?
Correct. What exactly was the proper procedures? Did they act, reasonably or not reasonably? You hear stories like in New York, they basically shut down a wing of the nursing home and just started stacking the bodies in there.
Wow.
They didn't have anywhere to go. So, I don't know what the answer is, but I'm sure there will probably be some sort of compromise on that. But that is another bill that's been up there that they're talking about. On the brighter side, or maybe we should save this for after break. I'll continue.
Okay, we'll come back to the other side of the mid-show break and hit on what we're talking about. We're talking with elder law attorney Bill Johnson, board-certified elder law attorney Bill Johnson, and we're talking about legislative updates since they're in session now, and we're talking about the things that affect seniors. And so on behalf of Rick Broderick, who's in the studio, our executive director with us today, and Bill Johnson, we'll see you on the other side of the break.
Here on 90.3 FM, now back to more of Helping Seniors of Brevard, and here's Kerry Fink. Kerry?
Thank you, John Harper. Yeah, we have been having a really great conversation on the radio during the first half of the show. If you missed any of it, let me remind you that everything we do with Helping Seniors, you can go to the Helping Seniors website at helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. You can find archived there so you can access it on demand. All of the television shows, radio shows, past copies of the newsletter, Helping Seniors updates, it's all there for you. You can find the TV shows and updates also on our YouTube channel, Helping Seniors of Brevard, or on Facebook. So if you missed the first part of the show, you missed some really good information because we have an expert in the house. It's board-certified elder law attorney Bill Johnson, and together with Rick Broderick, who's Helping Seniors Executive Director, we've been having this conversation about the legislative session that's going on right now in Tallahassee. And you've been sharing with us during the first part of the show about some of the bills and things that are coming up that are designed to help us with this problem of elder exploitation. And as we also talked about in the first half of the show, at least for me, I was always under the assumption, because you hear about the Nigerian lottery scam and things like that, so you always think of somebody calling grandma or mom or dad or whoever on the phone and scamming them some way like that. But apparently, Bill, what we've really been diving into is the fact that a lot of times this happens inside the family with somebody that maybe we hope they could be trusted.
Correct. A lot of times it happens within the family.
Yeah. So as we dig a little further, we said we were going to start out with a bright spot going into so as we go through the legislative, let's jump right for that.
Okay. So a lot of times people get when they're incapacitated, they haven't done any sort of planning and haven't done a power of attorney or a healthcare surrogate to designate somebody to make their financial and healthcare decisions for them. And when that happens, a lot of times we have to end up doing a guardianship.
Right.
And going back to my earlier scenario where we have mom living with daughter and son don't get along. Right. And so now daughter's got to file for guardianship on mom because she needs to, make mom's medical and financial decisions for her. And all of a sudden the son files a competing petition because he can't get access to mom because she's living with daughter, and he doesn't think that's right. And all of a sudden, mom is the pawn in a game that's been playing out for 40 years between the two kids.
Wow.
And so there was a group put together to develop some rules for something called elder care coordination. And it's a little bit like mediation. so that when we have these huge family disputes, instead of tying up the courts with a whole bunch of litigation and depositions and all that, we can opt in to sitting down with an elder care coordinator who can sit there and try to massage out the issues between the family members and hopefully come up with some sort of an agreement. A lot like we do in divorce proceedings.
Right.
In divorce cases, you have mediation, but you also have the option of having a family coordinator who is kind of a person who's there to work out all the visitation snafus and all that without having to tie up the court system. And so this is kind of offspring of that, where we would have someone who would sit down with the family members, hear their grievances, try to work out a settlement between them to get everybody to come to the table and work out some framework. And it's been proposed, I believe, a couple of times before, at least once before. But the best news was it was actually this year put on the Supreme Court of Florida's legislative agenda. So they saw some value in this, and they have kind of pushed that forward. And, you know, guardianship has been all over the news. So you're seeing all these things coming out, as well as elder exploitation. And so we're having, your knee-jerk reaction, I guess, to all this bad news that's coming out, and people are trying to work and fix the system. And so subsequently, you're seeing legislation that's in there trying to get the families to work together, to go after the exploiters, and do things to fix the system.
Yeah, it does seem like, the heart and the approach to it is the right way. I guess it's always a problem when we get into these details, and that's why I'm glad you keep such a close eye on it. I know I've heard Joe talk over the years. Joe Steckler, our president and founder, has talked over the years that I guess you send him some news or you forward to him some news, and he always likes to keep up with, because this is an ever-changing landscape. I mean, what was true maybe 6 months ago, could be changing now. And like you mentioned before the break, especially with COVID now, there's all these new twists and turns in all of this.
You are correct. And also, there was just a story in the Orlando Sentinel the other day about guardians. And it was dealing with the, I guess, clerk's office in Seminole County. And the auditor out there suggested that they hadn't done the proper amount of auditing of, guardians and professional guardians in their county. And then the clerk's office from Seminole fired back that, they had certain things they had to statutorily do. And, the auditor was looking at stuff that wasn't in their bailiwick. And, that was all playing out in the press, but it's not a day that goes on you don't hear something about this in the press.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've seen you speak, for example, at the Florida State Guardianship Association, and you guys will talk about, the constraints that you have to operate under so that a guardian can do the proper, play the proper role. But there's all these constraints. I remember hearing one of the gentlemen speaking who was talking about he had, the doctors were telling him, this person, there's no reason to keep him on the life support. You're actually causing a problem. And then he's trying to get a hold of a judge to make sure it's okay. And, there's all these unintended consequences. And yet the lesson that comes up over and over and over every time we sit down and talk is what Joe Steckler has talked about for years, about creating an aging plan. Because why do you have to have the guardianship? Because there wasn't a plan in place to begin with, right?
Exactly. There are only two circumstances really where professional guardians are needed. One is you don't have anybody else.
Right.
That we have to get somebody appointed because there aren't any family members who are willing to step in, or sometimes there aren't any family members.
Right.
And the second time is when we have to get one appointed by the court because somebody's stealing from the person.
Wow.
You had the power of attorney, you named somebody, and there's an exploitation going on.
Right.
So the person you named, well, we can't use them. And I'll tell you, some of the most vicious guardianship battles we've had, to the tune sometimes of hundreds of thousands of dollars, is that fact pattern. Because I think we were talking off air, there's this entitlement issue with some of these children that think, mom's got money, I have power of attorney, I should be able to do anything I want with mom's money. Mm-hmm. And then when we tell them, no, you can't do that, and we're going to put somebody else in charge of mom's money, wow, the fireworks start.
Oh, I can only imagine. Rick Broderick, who's our executive director, Rick, you're coming back home to Florida after being in the Midwest, and so you've kind of seen this also state to state. I guess this is kind of probably a universal problem, but how do you see it? Like looking at what you're familiar with most recently in Illinois, and then you're starting to get refamiliar with Florida rules and things.
Oh, thanks, Kerry. It really is a similar, or I can even say exactly the same issues. We may have different laws that you have to look at in terms of the way guardianship works, but people being people. The whole, I hate using the greed, but that's what it comes into at the end of the day. There's greed that drives a lot of us. And I think, we all too often talk about family values as being such an important part of our culture and what we need to go back to. I think before we even stress so hard the family values, I think this issue points out what we really need to try to drive home here. Is the whole idea of senior value and the idea of respect for seniors. I think as we have gotten more to, whether it's the Internet of Things or just technology, somehow that has driven a lot of the youth to somehow think that grandma, grandpa aren't valued anymore.
Yeah, we don't know how to use our iPhones, right?
Correct. And I think we need to go back to that. There's so much knowledge. If you can get a young person to sit with someone in a nursing home and talk about, World War II, or talk about the Korean War, or just talk about the hard times they had growing up, or a story that they can relate to, it is amazing to see the fire in the eyes of the young person to hear those stories. And that's what we need to get back to. And I think if we could get back to that, Bill, it would make your job either harder or easier, because we wouldn't need some of these legislative stuffs as much.
I would totally agree with that, because I've been doing guardianship long enough to remember when it was a quiet backwater practice. And now, most of the guardianships we file end up being contested.
It's kind of vicious out there these days, isn't it?
It really is. And then you throw in the economic dip in 2007, and then the latest one with COVID, and there are people who are counting on that inheritance. I think the statistics from 2007 were that a lot of people dipped into their 401ks to make it through that period, and a lot of people who were retired were taking money out to give to their kids because they couldn't pay their mortgages. And then here we are, a decade later, and we have another economic thing like we did before. And so that's money you can't get back. Once you've given it out to somebody so they keep a roof over their heads, that's money you don't have anymore to live on.
Well, and that's one of the things that we were also talking about during the break is why it's so important, again, that you get an aging plan together. And everything that we've talked about during the first part of this program really comes back to what Joe Steckler has been harping on relentlessly. I always explain it like this: when we're kids growing up, they tell us, what do you want to be when you grow up? Do you need to go to college for this kind of job? Do you need technical training for that kind of job? They're always on us about how are you going to prepare for your life ahead? And then when we're in our working years, are you saving for retirement? Do you have your 401k? Are you going to send your kids to college? What are you going to do about this? Are you going to buy a house? Are you going to rent? What are you going to do? And so we have these financial plans as we go along. And what Joe talks about is this aging plan that as we finally get to the retirement years, do we have a plan for things that could come up along the way? And everything, Bill Johnson, that you're talking about and have talked about, so much of this is an ounce of prevention worth a pound of cure kind of stuff, because what I have heard over and over when you and Joe talk about this, it costs virtually nothing to sit down and get some planning done versus the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars it costs later when something erupts at a time when you don't need it to erupt in terms of a family squabble or something like that.
That's very true. And we see that time and time again, though. You know, to go back what you were saying, we're told again and again to save and do all these things. Yet, I think the last statistic I saw was over half of Americans could not pay a surprise $500 bill.
It's a challenge out there. And then you throw COVID on it, like you said.
Yeah, and you know, in the 2007, and it's you know, people are looking how, when I can't work anymore, when I'm ready to retire, what is that going to look like?
Right. So, you know, to take a practical turn on this, I know you are very generous with your time. You have you speak at a lot of the agencies in town, and you're always talking about this thing about getting ahead. In fact, you publish every year. We just saw it again we were looking at it yesterday, actually, in the Boomer Guide. You publish this handbook of how to prepare for retirement, things that you need to know, and I would say it's a great primer on just the things that you want to understand, or at least maybe take a moment and get familiar with, because if somebody said, "Hey, I can save you tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, just give me a few minutes of your time," that's
right.
Like that commercial. It's priceless, right?
Exactly.
How do people how can people get a copy of this? I highly recommend it, because I remember reading, it used to call it the Orange Book or something.
Yeah, it's actually the Florida Long-Term Care and Nursing Home Answer Book, and we do it as an insert in the Boomer Guide. So you can get it through, the Boomer Guide if you pick one of those up, or if you just call the office, we can send you one.
And how do we call your office? Because while you're calling the office, you should ask for an appointment with Bill Johnson, because the first sit down you don't charge for, right?
That is true. We do free consultations.
Okay.
But our phone number is 321-253-1667.
So one more time, because this is radio and we want to give them a moment to grab that pencil.
321-253-1667.
And, not only that, but you have some resources, floridaelderlaw.net, right? That's the
Correct.
website.
That's the website.
You have a website that has a lot of resources, frequently asked questions, different things, and go ahead.
You can download the book right from there.
Oh, so you can just grab it right there.
Yeah, we're waiting for the actual the next version to come out, and then that'll be put on there. The one on there is a little dated, but we'll have that the newest version up there, and you can download it right off the internet.
Well, and as we've been talking about today, just as you've been giving us a legislative update, things are changing all the time. So what happened last year may or may not be applicable, and that's another point, right? Because you may think you have everything buttoned up, or you did some stuff maybe like if you're like Rick, you did paperwork and it made sense because you were in a different state, but now you find yourself you're here in Florida, and you want to make sure all those documents are correct, because there's nuances, right?
There can be,
yeah. So another reason to give Bill a call. So that number again,
321-253-1667.
Yeah, you definitely want to take advantage of that. And, while we're talking about just topics that involve seniors, I want to remind you the Helping Seniors car raffle is in full swing. Now, Bill, you have watched Joe put these things together year after year, going back to the Brevard Alzheimer's kind of days. And so this year we have... backed by popular demand, I would say, we have that Dodge Challenger. We have the Chevrolet Camaro. But there's also a couple of, I think they're underrated. I don't think they get necessarily the attention they deserve. There's the Mazda Miata convertible, and there is the Kia Sportage, which is a very cool, practical, all-around, you can throw your friends in there and all your stuff too, and even throw your surfboard on top or whatever. Do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite horse in this race?
I do not.
What about
They all sound good.
the winner gets to pick their car? By the way, Rick, do you have a favorite?
Yeah, I do. I actually want the Kia. I just think that that's a company that's an up and coming. I know that AJ and his whole dealership, now that they've moved out on 192, really is trying to offer unbelievable service. And to me, that's what it's more about. I'm in the seniors group, so I don't need a Challenger. But the Sportage and the service and the long term. Just knowing that that's going to be around probably for the rest of my life is something that really means something a lot to me right now. And as we talk, I think that's what a lot of this is. And Bill, from your perspective, how do seniors on the legislative side get more involved, and what issues and how do they bring them up? Because I got to believe that there's a lot of people, and COVID has made people feel even more either isolated or skeptical of our government. And I hate saying it that way, but too many times the elderly have been told, their seniors have been told, can't afford a really good medical system for you, because it would cost us $1 trillion. Yet we just spent trillions on COVID. So one and the other. How do they get involved?
Well, you can always contact your legislator, and if you go to the Florida House website or Florida Senate, put in your address, it'll pull up who your legislator is and their contact office, phone numbers for the local office as well as the ones in Tallahassee. So that's always a good start. There are a variety of organizations that advocate, AARP probably being one of the biggest ones that advocate for seniors. The elder law section, which I'm a member of, we do a lot of advocating for seniors. There is a real property and probate trust law section of the bar that does a lot of that as well. So there are groups out there that are advocating for them. Like I said, AARP is probably the biggest of those groups that gets involved with that. But if you feel a particular way about a certain bill, you're certainly free to pick up the phone or pick up a pen and write your legislator, and tell them how you feel about it.
Yeah, and that's also been one of the hallmarks of the Helping Seniors organization along the way is the advocacy effort. We always tell people that's one of the things that Helping Seniors exists to do is to make the needs of seniors known. Because, again, we live in a county where we have more over 65 than we do kids under 18, and we care and love for our kids under 18, but there sure are a lot of seniors that need a lot of help and care too.
And I didn't mean to just limit it to the state government, but you can also pick up the phone or pick up a pen and get in contact with your county commissioner as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, one of the things that I think is so important in all this is there is, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. We voted now a couple of times to help fund the schools here locally because we want kids to have a good future and a good education. But Lord knows we get calls every day from seniors who are in desperate measures because they need some help, and we do our very best to get them connected. I always call this a little organization that could, because it's amazing how much gets done simply because Joe, Kim, Rick, the entire team, they know who to go to get somebody connected. And just like you've been talking about today, the information that you've shared with us is really invaluable because as you invest your time in learning about this, think about this is something you're going to need the rest of your life. All these things that we've talked about on the radio today. And really, if you haven't sat down and checked up on your paperwork or just make sure that you're going in the right direction, you got to give Bill Johnson a call or somebody that's a qualified elder law attorney. Don't do this by running down to the Office Depot and getting a form, right, Bill?
That is true.
Give us that number one more time.
There you go.
Okay. 321-253-1667.
And while we're about out of time, I'm going to give you one more number to jot down. It's 321-473-7770. 321-473-7770. That is the Helping Seniors info line. So you can call and get help from Kim Bernard, our education specialist, but you can also get your Helping Seniors car raffle tickets. I was going to circle us back to that because you need to mark on your calendar October 9th. That is Saturday, October 9th at the American Muscle Car Museum. That's going to be the grand drawing, and those cars that we were talking about a few minutes ago, somebody will pick out which one they want and take it home. But you have to be in it to win it, so it is now a good time for you to get started early, get your car raffle tickets. You can go to helpingseniorscarraffle.com.
And it's a win it, but you don't have to be there.
No, that's true. That's true. You people ask that question. They say, "Well, I'm a snowbird. I may be back up north by then." So that's fine. You don't have to be present to win. But if you're in Florida, you definitely want to be at the Bill. You've been there before. You tell them.
I have. It's a fantastic place.
Yeah, it's good. Well, Bill, thank you. Rick, thank you for sharing on today. It's always a pleasure to be here for Helping Seniors Radio on behalf of Joe Steckler, Rick, Broderick, our executive director, Kim Bernard, our education specialist, the whole team. We'll see you next week.